The bare results don't exactly show it, but the general election was not quite the great victory it seemed for Keir Starmer. Thanks to the second lowest turnout since 1885, scarcely 20% of eligible British voters support Keir Starmer's Labour, yet he will end up with approximately 2/3 of all parliamentary seats.
The World Economic Forum are desperate for public-private partnerships linked to digital IDs.
Essentially what this public-private partnership that the 𝗲𝗏 is pushing for is for every person's access to the internet to be tied to a digital ID or a government-issued ID, but presumably a digital ID just because of where government-issued ID programs are all going essentially around the world.
Now, many skeptics warn that a digital ID is the end of democracy as we know it and an irreversible step into a dystopian future of firstly no cash, just a digital currency controlled by governments, potentially leading to a Chinese-style social credit system where government has the ability to control and restrict every single aspect of your lives, from where you go, how you travel, your healthcare, what you eat, control over your spending habits, a veto over your job prospects, and so on. Here's digital ID and digital currency skeptic and former Wall Street investment banker, by the way, so she knows of what she speaks, Catherine Austin-Fitts.
Programmable money doesn't click in and work well unless you've got everybody on the grid. You need to be able to track them. You need to be able to watch their behavior. You need to be able to influence their behavior. And then you've got complete control. And that is not just wearables. That is not just an internet of bodies. That is a coup d'etat. That is the end of human liberty in the West.
On your screen is the World Economic Forum's graph on how a digital ID is central to controlling every part of an individual's life. Financial services, food and sustainability, travel and mobility, e-commerce, social media and telecommunications, it's all there. And of course, every aspect of your healthcare. And what would that look like? Here's CEO of Pfizer speaking not long ago at the World Economic Forum, the 𝗲𝗏, for example, boasting about the latest pharmaceutical digital technology.
Basically biological chip that it is in the tablet. And once you take the tablet and dissolves into your stomach, sends a signal that you took the tablet.
Are they kidding? Digital ID schemes potentially give absolute powers of surveillance and control over every aspect of your life to unelected bureaucrats, unscrupulous politicians, and greedy governments and corporations. If you don't think future authoritarian governments of whatever persuasion won't use these powers ruthlessly and mercilessly, then you must have been fast asleep during COVID QR codes and vaccine mandates. According to an opinion piece in LifeSite News, the reality of digital identity is not about curbing illegal immigration. It has nothing to do with securing jobs, and it most certainly isn't meant to protect youth online. They say digital ID is the linchpin of the United Nations push for a global surveillance state. Indeed, Australia was one of 193 countries that signed up last year under Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese to the United Nations' insidious Pact for the Future, a non-binding pact which says signatory countries will, quote, develop and decide on a set of safeguards for inclusive, responsible, safe, secure and user-centered digital public infrastructure that can be implemented in different contexts, end of quote. The Chinese mouthpiece, the Global Times, praised the pact, which should be reason enough in itself to run a mile from it. Gushing, quote, as we enter a new era, we face the significant question of what kind of a world we should build and how to build it, end of quote. China has provided an answer, constructing a community with a shared future for mankind, end of quote. Okay, well, we've seen that future that China is so keen to impose on the rest of us, and it's an absolute horror show.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens. The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date.
𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃 is a former Silicon Valley video and camera design whiz kid. He's now turned whistleblower on the dangers of where big tech, along with big government, want to take us.
Facial recognition will be used to unlock your digital identity, which is going to be a tool of control for the agendas that are coming down the pipeline.
Elements of that control are already with us.
Alexa, good morning. Good morning.
You are never alone in your home, and this is why. All your devices at home and all smart appliances, they are all connected on a wireless network. When you leave your home, all modern vehicles are connected to the internet, so your automobile is being tracked all the time. When you're going under a string of smart LED poles and smart LED lights on the highway and in the streets of your towns and cities, those form a wireless network and are tracking your vehicle. They are tracking all the devices on you, from smartphones to smartwatches when you're walking on the streets. So data is being collected 24/7 continuously on every human being whenever you are within these wireless networks.
If 𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃 is correct, much of the dystopian technology to track and surveil us is already in place, like he says. And some, but not all of it, we have willingly adopted for ease and convenience. Fair enough. But is it relatively benign when the data being connected remains solely in the hands of the companies who provided it? Although, as we have repeatedly seen, most recently with Qantas, mass data breaches and thefts do occur, with often very damaging results to individuals' privacy and indeed to their finances. But that is all child's play if you then introduce a government digital ID. Suddenly, Canberra bureaucrats, the sort who don't even know what a woman is, have the potential to have absolute power over you. And freedom is quickly a thing of the past. Here's Aman again.
In the long term, the plan is to pretty much lock up humanity in smart cities, which is kind of a superset of a 15-minute city. They've sold all the state and local governments and countries that smart cities are about sustainability and the good of the city. But in reality, the language from the UN and WEF and their white papers is all inverted. It's surveillance, control via LED grid is why the smart lighting is death. Water management is about water rationing, noise pollution is about speech surveillance, traffic monitoring is about limiting mobility, and then, of course, energy conservation is all about rationing heat, electricity, and gasoline.
Here in Australia, the E-Safety Commissioner, a good friend, by the way, of the World Economic Forum, the WEF, is soon to announce how her under-16 social media ban will be enforced. Albo and co have been wandering around boasting how impressed the United Nations were by Australia's plans. Over in Europe, the EU are inspired by Albo's under-16 social media idea ban. I'll bet they are. And reason enough to be already deeply concerned. But my suspicion and fear is that the under-16 ban, supported, by the way, by the treacherous bedwetters of the Liberal Party, is the Trojan horse to introduce a digital ID by stealth. Keir Starmer is currently trying to introduce the UK's digital ID by making it mandatory if you want to work and pretending it will solve Britain's immigration problems. The public aren't buying it. But what could be a better way to trick the public into getting a digital ID than by linking it to restricting under 16-year-olds from social media? Suddenly you're doing the right thing for the kids. And don't worry if it's a tad inconvenient. What with facial recognition and stuff, you'll soon get used to it.
I believe that over time, facial age estimation, liveness tests, and other forms of age assurance will become normalized as well. Different people at different ages will have different levels of comfort with things like taking selfies or using biometrics or even digital ID. It really varies.
The E-Safety Commissioner is about to announce how Australia intends to implement its under-16 social media restrictions. If you hear the words digital, identification, biometrics, or facial recognition, you know the fix is in. Surrender to a digital ID and surrender your children's freedom.